Hey guys, it's me, Jennifer Howard. I am the owner of Facets Relational Care, and today we're going to continue with the series on how to make it work with the different Enneagram numbers, and today we're going to do Enneagram Type 4. So I would say my first point in learning how to relate a little bit better with someone that's an Enneagram Type 4 is to learn how to be fully present with them without enabling the martyrdom, and martyrdom isn't the right word, without enabling the things that they do sometimes to get unhealthy attention. And I'm going to give you an example of that. I know that I have told you guys before that my dad was a 4, and I may even have told this story before, but I don't know, and it's very relevant to this point, so I'm going to use it again as an example. My dad was a fairly unhealthy 4, and one of the more ridiculous and childish behaviors that he used to engage in was if ever he had a bad day, or if he was just having a day where he felt like he didn't have the attention that he wanted, he, I think because he feared rejection so much, would never come out and just say, I want to spend time with you, or I want some attention. He would engage in kind of these ridiculous behaviors to get attention. And one of the things that he used to do was he would come into the living room and lay himself out entirely across the sofa, and he would begin to feign having some kind of an illness, a migraine headache, a stomach ache, achy muscles, a toothache, whatever he could come up with. And we never spent much time as a family. We were all kind of doing our own thing. So he would be in there in the living room, strewn out across the sofa. I would be in my bedroom reading a book. My sister is in her room chatting with her friends on the internet. My mother is in their bedroom knitting a sweater or a scarf or whatever she used to knit. And he would lay in there on the couch, I kid you not, sometimes for hours, just waiting for an opportunity. And so, an hour or two would go by and I'd get hungry and I'd say, well, I want a bowl of cereal. So he would hear my bedroom door open, and he knew I was going to have to pass by the living room to get to the kitchen to get what I wanted. And as soon as the door opens, he'd listen for footsteps, and I swear to you, I don't exaggerate this. This is exactly what he used to do. I would hear coming from the living room as I would go by, I would hear, oh, oh, my head. Oh, my head hurts so bad. I wish someone loved me enough to come in here and check on me and see if I was okay. Oh, the pain. Oh, I wish someone loved me enough to get me some chicken noodle soup for my head. Oh, and he would just go on and on and on like that. I'm not kidding you. And so I'm in the kitchen listening to this, like rolling my eyes. I'm not going to go in there and get that man any chicken noodle soup. This is ridiculous. And I would get my food and I would go back into my room and close the door and wouldn't say a word to him. And he would lay out there and he would continue to do it. My mother would get up to come out to use the bathroom. Same thing. My sister would get up to, see if she could watch something on TV. She'd go into the living room and see him laid out there on the couch, and she'd be like, nope, not me. And she'd turn around and leave, and he'd try it with her. And if you and that was just the thing. If you came into the living room and he saw you come in, he would say, oh, thank God you're here. I feel terrible. You gotta help me. If you really loved me, sweetie, you would go get me some hot soup, cause my tummy's hurting right now, or a toothache or whatever it was. And he'd start in on you with all of that nonsense. So that's an example of the unhealthy behaviors that 4s will engage in to get attention. And I know that it sounds childish when you listen to it, but this is behavior that they're engaging in. Not all of them. It is a fairly unhealthy behavior. So don't hear me say that this is a thing that all 4s do. But I think that you would be surprised, especially if you are a 4, to observe yourself maybe over a month. And I think you would be surprised to see how many instances you engage in behaviors that perhaps aren't as, I don't know, clownish or childish, but other behaviors that seem to be a bit more grown up or more mature, but the motive behind those is still trying to make yourself look helpless in a way to get attention when you just don't understand how to say that you need attention. You know what I mean? So I think it's more common than most 4s perhaps would like to admit to. But one of the reasons why I think that it's important to be present with a 4 without enabling that is because 4s have this, one of their core fears, I think, is this fear of rejection. Because, in the mind of a 4, they've already got this internal belief that they're wrestling with all the time, that something is fundamentally wrong with them, that they're not like the rest of us. And I mean that in all of the worst ways. And I think it's scary for them to make relational connections with people, especially deep relational connections, because I think perhaps an unspoken fear that they have is I am going to allow this person into my life. I'm going to get intimate with them, and then they're going to see how fucked up I am, and they're going to hit the bricks, and I'm going to be abandoned again. I'm going to be rejected again. I'm never going to be able to do anything right. No one's ever going to love me. I'm an unlovable, broken person, kind of a thing, and that just adds to that feeling of being alienated, if you will, from their fellow man, which is a 4 issue. And you need to be able, if you're in a relationship with a 4, especially if you are in a committed relationship, if you're married or if you're, committed to just being with each other long term, this is something that you're going to have to learn how to do. I don't believe if you're in a relationship with a 4 that it's appropriate to just completely shut them out when they engage in those behaviors. That's just my belief. If you feel like you need to do that, maybe you do in your particular situation, but I don't believe that that's something that's appropriate to do, because when you shut them out, when you give them these really big ultimatums, you're acting like this and I'm not going to talk to you until you're done. Come get me when you're ready to act like a grown up, which is something that perhaps my mom would have said to my dad. I don't think that that's appropriate for them, because all that you're doing in that moment is proving to them that their fears are justified, that there is something fundamentally wrong with them, that no one is going to love them, that they're going to drive everybody that they love away. And that's already a hard thing for them to deal with. You know what I mean? There's a lot of wounding that comes with that. So to be present without necessarily enabling the behavior, that's going to look different for every situation that it arises. You know what I mean? There's not like a one-size-fits-all formula there. I'm going to give you an example with my husband, who is not a 4. He's a 9, but this example fits what I'm talking about, so I'm going to use it. My husband, and by the way, this is an example of me having to learn how to be present without necessarily enabling the drama, okay? So my husband will come home from work. He's had a really bad day at work, and he decides that he wants to talk to me about it, and he calls it venting. He'll go through all of this terrible stuff that's happened and all of the stuff that people have done, and this is why he was right and they were wrong. And I mean, he's a 9, so his core emotion is anger. That's going to be the first emotion that comes up out of him. That's how he responds to life. Anger comes real quickly for him. It takes him a while to realize if he's feeling anxiety, sadness, shame. Those things don't come up to the surface as quickly for him, so he's not as familiar with those. So he's got to approach his life situations from this perspective of anger. That's also true for 8 and 1. That's part of being in the gut triad, okay? The instinct triad, whatever you want to call it. So he comes in and he's ranting and raving and going on about all of this unfair stuff and how, if they would have listened to him, this would have been better and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. And, the first few times it is ranting, and I completely understand it. We all need room to vent and to blow off some steam. And it's fantastic when you have someone that loves you enough to give you a safe place to do that. Okay. But after a while, I noticed that it had been, a month, 2 months, and he was coming home almost every day from work complaining about the same thing, the exact same thing, involving the exact same people. And I would try to give him different perspectives to consider, and he was kind of half hearing those, I think. Some days he's more resistant than others, but, he would come home and he would say, well, I really just want someone to vent to. I want someone to vent to. And I hear that. But after a while, that becomes an enabling procedure for me. You guys have to understand, and this is true of Enneagram type 4. It's true of every person. I don't care what your Enneagram type is. Anytime that your perspective of a situation has an extreme in it, something like they were wrong and I was right, or I'm always the victim, they always treat me like this. Extreme thinking like that is indicative that your perspective of the situation is very skewed. And this is the case for him as well when he kind of gets into these ruts where he comes home every day and he was the victim and if only they had listened to him, blah, 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 so forth and so on. He's really good at playing the victim in that respect. Fours especially, I think, out of all the numbers on the Enneagram, have got that whole playing the victim thing down pat. And they will use that to their advantage. And so for me, when I deal with my husband and he comes home and he starts doing this with me, I had to learn after a couple of months. I noticed that nothing was really changing. I'm always offering him these different perspectives. I'm giving him practical steps that he can take. He's an ISTJ, so he's going to want like an exact thing to do. You know, when you go into work tomorrow, do A, B, C, and D, and it should give you D, you know, or E result, whatever. He likes that sort of stuff. I was giving him practical things that he could do in the moment, applicable things. I was giving him theoretical ideas. I was giving him different perspectives. And he's still coming home having the same problem. So I realized that he wasn't looking for solutions. He wasn't looking to improve. He wanted to go someplace and be the victim and have somebody coddle him and do the whole, oh, you poor baby, you know, you're 100% right. They shouldn't have treated you that way. And you know, to an extent, yes, people do things to us that we don't deserve. Yes, we can be victims of, you know, malicious intent that other people have. But 99.9% of the time, we need to assess perhaps what we have done to create an opportunity to be on the receiving end of such behavior. And that's true of everybody. It is so rare that, you know, a situation that you're in is so terribly bad entirely because of somebody else. There's always something that you did that created the opportunity for that, however big or small that may be. And healthy individuals, more emotionally rounded individuals, are capable of taking accountability. You know, they acknowledge what they've done and they allow themselves to be held accountable for their part in that situation. And fours, I think, have a really hard time doing that because they've already have such a hard, I mean, they already feel like they're just fundamentally fucked up. You know what I mean? So it's so hard for them, I think, to just sit down and be brutally honest about their part in why they're unhappy. You know what I mean? I think it's easier for them to say, well, this person doesn't understand me and, you know, they just didn't love me, or they promised they were going to do this and they didn't do that. I think it's easy for them to do that, but you can't enable that. You can be present and not enable it. So again, going back to the example with my husband, after a time I began to say to him, I'm so sorry that that happened to you again today. And I was very honest with him. You may or may not be able to do this with the four that you're in relationship with, but with my husband, I was able to say this. And I said, I'm so sorry that that happened to you today. I've tried to offer you, you know, perspectives and things that you could do in the past, and it doesn't sound like you're taking those and implementing those. And at this point, I'm really out of ideas and out of things that I could do to help you. So I don't think that it's worth your time or mine to sit here and have this whole conversation again and let you rant again. If you know, really just want someone to listen to what you have to say, I mean, you know, maybe there's somebody else that you can call, but at this point, I think it's counterproductive for me to, you know, engage in this conversation with you. And you may be in a relationship with a four that would not be able to emotionally handle hearing it in that direct of a fashion. So if that's the case, you might try things like, if they come in and they start going on about woe is me, you can say, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And let that be it. You know, I'll sit here on the couch and the TV will be on and he'll come and sit next to me and start talking and I'll say, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope tomorrow is better for you. And I genuinely mean those things. There's no inauthenticity in what I'm saying. And that actually is another point that you might just make a note of. You know, if this is something that you want to try to do with the four that you're in relationship with, please don't offer them false emotions just to placate them in lieu of the enabling that perhaps you were doing before. I mean, be honest. with where you're at. You don't necessarily have to go through the whole spiel of, I don't think we're getting anywhere. I feel like it's a waste of my time to work through this with you. But you can say, like I say with my husband, I'm sorry to hear that that's the kind of day that you had. I hope that tomorrow is better for you. And I genuinely mean those things. I'm not going to give him all of this space to go on about how so-and-so is the reason that his job sucks and whatever else that it is that he wants to say. But I'm still present too. Do you see what I mean? I don't get up and leave the room. I don't say, no, I'm sick of hearing it. I'm not going to talk to you anymore about this. You need to start doing what I tell you to do, or just don't even come home and talk to me. I don't do any of that. I'm present with him, but I'm also not necessarily enabling that victimhood. Do you know what I mean? So that's a key point, I think, in relating with a 4, simply because that tends to be one of their personality flaws, if you will. It's one of the weaker aspects of the type 4 personality. Everybody engages in victimhood at some point or another. So this is something that you could exercise really with anybody, but I think that it would be especially helpful if you were in a relationship with someone who's a 4. So that's one point that I would make. I would also say that if you are in a relationship with someone that's a 4, I would encourage you to encourage them to do things just because they want to. Okay, so 4s, and I've noticed 3s as well, probably 2s, but I think it's apparent in 3s and 4s. There's so much comparison that's going on in their mind at any given time. Well, what is this person doing? What did that person say? That sort of a thing. And they tend to want to paint themselves in a light that they believe is attractive to other people. And perhaps that's not the right way to say it. They want to paint themselves in a light that will get them the attention that makes them feel validated. I guess I should say that. And the reason that I put it in that language is because 3s want to be attractive to you. 4s just want you to notice them. Does that make sense? I think in some instances, for some 4s, and if you're a 4, you could give me some feedback on this because I would like to hear your opinion on this point. I think for some 4s, I don't even necessarily think it has to be positive attention, praise, admiration, that sort of thing, even though I think they would take that. But sometimes kind of the vibe that I get from 4s is that they almost like engaging in the behaviors that you have very specifically said you don't like. It's kind of like a shock value thing for them because it gets them attention. You know what I mean? Anyways, I tell you this because if you're in a relationship with a 4, encourage them to do something that's for them. They're constantly looking around to see what the norm is for other people so that they can know how, not necessarily to defy it, even though maybe for unhealthier 4s, they like to be defiant, but they're looking for a way to take that norm that the rest of us have and to exaggerate it a little bit or manipulate it a little bit or kind of make it their own so that they can be set apart in some way. And they're doing it in really superficial ways. They're doing it in ways that you can see on the outside, like the way that they dress, the way that they decorate their office at work, the type of car that they drive, maybe, a tattoo that they get, piercings, whatever. But they do it in other ways that aren't necessarily obvious to the eye. They express opinions that directly go against what everyone else is expressing. They have emotional reactions to things that are opposite of what other people had emotional reactions to. There are things that you can look for. Some are very exaggerated and easy to spot, and some are very, very nuanced, and they take time to see. But the point is that everything is done through the lens of comparison. It's like they need to know where everybody else is so that they can know how far apart they want to set themselves. Do you see what I'm saying? And when you love someone that's a 4, you know what? Sometimes who you are or a thing that you like to do or the way that you like to express yourself, sometimes that's a lot like other people. And 4s need to know that it's okay. I think more importantly than that, I think that they need to know that they're not going to lose you if they're like somebody else. I think that they need to know that they're still going to have your attention and your admiration and your desire for them, even if they choose to engage in something more normative, if you will. I would encourage you just to encourage them. If it's something that they like, then just do it. It doesn't matter if other people are doing it. It doesn't matter if it's trendy. If you like it, do it. If you want to wear it, wear it. It doesn't matter if you blend in with everybody else. You don't have to be the person that's setting this trend. You don't have to be the person that's defying this. You don't have to be the person that's offering the really unique perspective that none of us thought of before. It's totally okay to come in and not have an original idea to contribute to a conversation, and it doesn't take away from your worth as a person. It doesn't mean that, you're not functional. It doesn't mean that you can't have a creative idea. It just means that today, in this instance, in this conversation, you didn't have anything to input that wasn't already there. I mean, I don't know, guys. I'm talking about, if it's me, I call that a vacation. I'm always the one, I'm not a 4, but I'm always the one, unintentionally, I don't look for it, but it's like, I always find that when I go places and engage in conversations with people, I'm always the one that's saying, like, the thing that no one else thought of. And people are always stopping and they're like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. And I'm like, I'm just telling you what I see. Apparently, I see things differently than most other people. So I don't know, when I go and I'm in a conversation and I can get through the whole conversation and people aren't stopping to ask me questions or asking me to elaborate on a statement that I made, I mean, again, that's a vacation for me. I'm an INFJ, so I'm really introverted. So when I'm done with this conversation, I kind of want to end it and leave. I don't want to stay behind here and have 20 questions with you because my energy is like gone. So to me, it's a vacation. I think 4s would find that their lives would be so much easier if they could just let go of whether or not who they were and what they said and what they felt and what they thought and what they did and what they wore was or was not getting them attention. You know what I mean? So encourage them to do that. Let them know that you love them just the way that they are, and that it's not any one individual thing that makes us different from another person. It's the culmination of all of these things put together that makes you different from any other person. It's how you have been biologically designed. It's how you have been influenced by society and culture as you've grown. It's how you've been influenced by your family of origin. It's your worldview. It's your religion. It's your preferences, your likes, your dislikes, your attitudes. It's your personality. It's all of these different things that make you, your talents and your skills and your interests and things like that. And all of those things culminate, those things and many more, to make a unique person that's never going to be repeated again. And just because that individuality isn't necessarily apparent on the outside, that doesn't mean that you don't recognize it as the person that loves them. So tell them that. You know what I mean? Remind them that there's no one else in the entire world like them, and you love them because of who they are, and that they don't have to try to earn your attention or your affection. They can just be them. They can be broken. They can be confused. They can have absolutely no idea what they're doing with their life or where they're going or who they are, and you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to be there with them through that. And then do what you say, if at all possible. If it's, a seriously unhealthy relationship, or an abusive relationship, don't go making promises that you can't keep, first of all. But, if it's a relationship that you just need to throw some work into, throw some work into it. Stay there and do what you can to make it work, because they really, really need that. Because I don't think that most 4s believe that people are going to show up and give that much. Do you know what I mean? That's another thing that you could do. Third point. With 4s, I have found that they tend to be pretty stubborn people. Everybody, to some extent, is a really stubborn person. So, look, don't force them to just do anything that they don't want to do. Just don't. And again, this is a standard rule for any relationship. I don't care what 2 Enneagram numbers that we're talking about. Have respect for their personhood. If they aren't ready to do something that they know that they should do to better themselves or to make their situation better, that's their decision. Again, be present without enabling. My husband comes home from work sometimes and he still talks about the same issues with the same people as if he and I have never discussed it before. I no longer enable that behavior. I'm not going to engage in that conversation in depth because it gives him the attention that he wants and reinforces that victimhood is going to get him that attention. But I don't shut him out. You know what I mean? When he's ready to make a change, he'll make a change, but not until then. And there's nothing that I can do to persuade him to see something from my perspective and my point of view. I have this saying that I like to use. I always tell people, I can't be God for you. And what that means is I don't have the capability to give you divine insight. I can't give you revelations into your own behavior, into your own life. You will see things the way that you want to see them, in all likelihood, a perspective that's based on past experiences that you've had, and you will believe that this worldview and those experiences are indicative of the truth. And I can't change that. And that's fine. It's okay. I can be present with you until you're ready to change that. You know what I mean? And you may never be ready to change that. And that's also okay. That's your decision and it's your prerogative. It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with our relationship. And so if you are in relationship with a 4, you need to have these ideas at the forefront of your mind, okay? Because they can be really stubborn. And I think it's hard sometimes to watch them flounder around in life. I think I told you guys this. I used to date a guy that was a 4 on the Enneagram. He was a 4 with 5 and he was an INFP. And it killed me watching this guy live his life because he had so much potential and so much talent and so much passion for the career that he was in. And I don't want to say that he wasted it because he would use it, but it's like he just never fully applied himself there. It was like everything that he did in his career was half-assed. And so he would get, maybe this smaller contracting job here, but he didn't ever get that really big one that he wanted. And it wasn't because he wasn't qualified. I think that he would have gotten them. He just never applied himself. And it killed me to watch. And he would always talk about how, woe is me because this never works out for me and I never get to do all of this stuff that I want to do. And I always have these big plans for my life and they always fall through. And from my perspective of knowing him, it was like, yeah, because you don't do anything at all to make those things happen. It's like you sit there and just cross your fingers and hope that they're going to happen, and then they don't happen for you, and you think it's your fault because you're a terrible person and no one likes you and nobody wants to help you get these things. And in a respect, it is your fault because you didn't do what you could have done. You know what I mean? It's so hard for me to watch 4s sometimes because they have so much potential. They're really, really smart people. I have a friend of mine who's a 4, and again, it's the same thing. She has these really big dreams and these passions of becoming an OBGYN, and she, every year, another year passes, and she'll say, well, I feel like a failure in my life because I've always wanted to be an OBGYN, and I didn't get into school. This year I really wanted to start school, and I'm like, you didn't get in because you didn't apply. Well, there was all this stuff that you had to do to apply, and it's like they get overwhelmed with having to exert the energy to go and be fully present in life because that takes away from the time that they use to just feel life. You know what I mean? So you can't do anything about it is the point, and it's sad because you're going to watch the 4 that you love just kind of sit. And it's like they'll have all of these amazing opportunities right there, and they can just reach out and take them, and they're going to do nothing, and they won't even be able to see it. They'll be like, oh, woe is me. I wish that I had this and I don't have this. And that's an exaggerated version of that. But if you're going to be in a relationship with a 4 or with anybody, you can't change the way they see. You can't change their perspective. You can't force them to do anything. You can't force them to want to get better. You can't force them to see that they need to get better. It's none of that. You can't force them to see why they're lovable. You can't. I would encourage you not to try. Say what you want to say, but don't spend hours going back and forth with this person trying to use your intellect to change their worldview. You're not going to do it. You will not, with any of your opinions, with any of your facts, with anything like that, ever change anybody's past experiences in life and the worldview that they now have because of those experiences. There is an old expression that it goes, the man with the experience is never at the mercy of the man with the facts. And what that means is you could tell me night and day, all day long, that fire doesn't burn. And you've conducted all of these scientific studies that show that fire doesn't burn. And you've got all these statistics and these numbers and all of this data that shows that fire doesn't burn. But if I stick my hand in the fire and it burns, your data means nothing to me because I've had an experience that contradicts what your data says that you have. And so the same is with type 4, and the same concept applies again to all human relationships. Everyone has a life experience. Everybody is shaped, their view of who they are is shaped by the experiences that they've had. The view of other people and their intentions are shaped by those experiences. Your view of God, whether or not there is a God or there isn't a God, and if there is, what type of person he is shaped by your past experiences. You're not going to change that, okay? So save your breath. Give them room to see the world as they need to see it, even if you don't understand it, even if it's not how you see the world, and give them time to come around, okay? You can't be God for that person, okay? So we're a little over time. I think really I only covered maybe 4 points, but they were 4 pretty good points. So I hope that you got something out of that. You guys know the drill as usual. Comments, questions, whatever. I love discussing it with you guys because y'all will give me some really, really good feedback and different perspectives that I've never considered before, which shapes the videos that I do in the future and the way that I interact with other people and the questions that I ask. So I love that you guys do that. Y'all are awesome. So anyways, down there, you know how to do it.